Loyalty. It's a word that's lost its weight in today's world. But for Bill Anderson, a 72-year-old farmer with calloused hands and a heart full of pride, loyalty wasn't just a word, it was a way of life. For over 50 years, Bill had dedicated his farm to serving his country, providing a training ground for military helicopters. But now, as developers circled his land like vultures, Bill's world was crumbling. Little did he know, a simple sign he put up would spark a chain of events that would change his life forever. Welcome to Zeri Stories. Let's dive into this incredible story of resilience, patriotism, and the power of standing your ground.
Bill Anderson was no ordinary farmer. At 72, he had spent his entire life working the same 1,000 acres of land that had been in his family for 3 generations. Unlike the massive corporate farms that dominated the landscape, Anderson Farm was a humble, family-run operation. But it wasn't just a farm, it was a symbol of service. For decades, Bill had maintained a special landing zone in his south field, a crucial training area for military helicopters from an airbase 2 states away. Every week, without fail, Bill would prepare the field for night landing practice. He'd set out the markers, check the lights, and ensure everything was perfect for the young pilots who relied on his farm to hone their skills. His wife, Martha, would often join him, brewing coffee and making sandwiches for the crews. "Can't expect our boys to train on empty stomachs," she'd say with a smile. The locals knew Anderson Farm well. It wasn't just a piece of land. It was a cornerstone of the community and a vital part of military training. Pilots who had trained on Bill's fields had gone on to serve in conflicts from Desert Storm to Afghanistan. For Bill, maintaining the landing zone wasn't just a duty, it was an honor. But everything changed when Silicon Valley developers came knocking. Techscape, a massive corporation, had bought up the surrounding land and had their sights set on Bill's farm. They offered him a fortune, far above market value, but Bill refused. To him, the farm wasn't just property, it was a legacy. "We're offering you a chance to retire in comfort," the developers said, their tone dripping with condescension. But Bill stood firm. "This land isn't for sale," he replied, his voice steady. "It's not just my farm, it's a training ground for our troops. That's worth more than any amount of money." The developers didn't care. They saw dollar signs, not history, not service, not loyalty. As the weeks turned into months, Bill watched helplessly as his neighbors sold their land. The Montgomery place next door, where helicopter crews used to rest between exercises, was already marked for development. Down the road, the Wilson family had sold their 200 acres, which had served as an emergency landing zone. One by one, the farms that had supported military training for decades were disappearing. Bill's heart ached as he sat at his kitchen table, staring at the final eviction notice. 50 years of tradition, of service, of loyalty, all about to be erased. His father had maintained these fields during the Cold War, and his grandfather had started the tradition during World War II. Now, zoning laws and corporate greed were doing what even war couldn't, taking away his farm. That afternoon, with trembling hands, Bill put up a sign at the edge of his property. It read, "Notice. Military Training Zone Closing. Anderson Farm serving our forces since 1943. Below it, he added a smaller note, "Thank you for 50 years of service to our country." The sign was simple, but it carried the weight of a lifetime of dedication. Bill didn't tell the military at first. He just kept maintaining the landing zone, setting out the markers, and guiding the helicopters in. But something was different. His usual proud stance was stooped, his voice cracked when he radioed coordinates, and his eyes were heavy with sorrow. A young reporter happened to drive by and notice the sign. Intrigued, she stopped to talk to Bill. He told her about the farm's history, about the generations of pilots who had trained there, and about the developers who wanted to destroy it all. The reporter took photos and wrote an article, not expecting much to come of it. But something about that simple sign and the story behind it struck a chord. The article spread like wildfire through military circles. Veterans, active duty personnel, and civilians alike shared the story, outraged that such a vital training ground was being threatened. Bill's phone started ringing off the hook. Messages of support poured in from across the country. But the most important call came late one evening, as Bill was finishing up his chores in the barn. "Mr. Anderson," a voice said on the other end of the line, "please hold for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs." Bill's heart skipped a beat. He thought it must be a prank, but seconds later, another voice came on the line. "Mr. Anderson, I saw the story about your farm. Tell me about it." For the next 20 minutes, Bill poured his heart out. He talked about the late nights guiding helicopters in, about watching young pilots become skilled aviators, and about teaching the next generation what dedication to country really means. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then the chairman spoke. "Mr. Anderson, we can't lose training grounds like yours. Give me 24 hours. Bill could hardly believe what had just happened. His hands were shaking as he hung up the phone. He called out to Martha, who came running from the kitchen. "Martha, you won't believe it," he said, his voice trembling. "That was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He's going to help us save the farm." Martha burst into tears, overwhelmed with relief. After months of uncertainty, after watching Bill work himself to exhaustion, after fearing they'd lose everything, finally someone understood. The next morning, as Bill finished his chores, the sound of rotor blades filled the air. An Apache helicopter appeared over the tree line, followed by 3 Blackhawks. They landed in his training field and 2 generals stepped out, carrying briefcases. "Mr. Anderson," one of them said, showing his credentials, "we're here to make sure your farm stays exactly where it belongs, serving the United States military." The sound of rotor blades echoed across the fields as Bill Anderson stood in awe, watching the helicopters land on his farm. 2 generals stepped out, their presence commanding respect. For Bill, this wasn't just a visit, it was a lifeline. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs had kept his promise, and now the fate of Anderson Farm hung in the balance. Welcome back to Tales Unveiled, where we continue the incredible story of a farmer who refused to let loyalty die. Let's see how this tale unfolds. The generals walked toward Bill, their boots crunching on the gravel path. Bill's heart raced as they approached, their expressions serious but kind. "Mr. Anderson," one of them began, "we're here to ensure your farm remains a vital part of our military training program. We've reviewed your case and we're prepared to take action." Bill led them to his kitchen table, where Martha had already set out cups of steaming coffee. The generals spread out a stack of documents, explaining how the farm would be designated as a protected military training facility. This designation would make it impossible for developers to seize the land, ensuring that Anderson Farm could continue its mission for generations to come. "Sign here, Mr. Anderson," one of the generals said, pointing to the bottom of the document. "This ensures your farm will remain a training ground for our forces." Bill's hands trembled as he picked up the pen. After months of uncertainty, after sleepless nights and endless worry, this moment felt surreal. He signed his name with a flourish, his heart swelling with pride and relief. The generals smiled as they packed up the paperwork. "The chairman wanted us to remind you," one of them said, "that some things are worth more than money. Supporting our military is one of them." But the story didn't end there. That same day, the generals paid a visit to Techscape's offices. The developers, who had been so confident in their plans, were caught off guard when the military officials walked in. "Your development plans," one of the generals said, his tone firm, "have been superseded by national security interests. This land is now a protected military installation." The developers' faces turned pale. No amount of money or influence could override the military's authority. Within hours, they revised their plans, not just for Bill's farm, but for all the surrounding land that supported military training. One by one, the neighboring farmers received calls. The Montgomery place would remain a rest area for helicopter crews. The Wilson family could keep their emergency landing zone. The farms that had seemed doomed just days ago were now protected, their futures secured. Today, Anderson Farm still stands as a testament to loyalty and service. Bill, now in his 70s, continues to maintain the landing zones, though he's no longer alone. His grandson, Jimmy, works alongside him, learning the family tradition. The training schedules are busier than ever, and Martha still prepares coffee and sandwiches for the crews, just as she always has. The sign Bill put up that fateful day now hangs in his barn, a reminder of the battle he fought and won. Visitors often ask him about the day the chairman called, but Bill just smiles and changes the subject. He'd rather show them the new landing lights or let them watch the helicopters practice their approaches. For Bill, the farm was never about recognition or reward. It was about service. It was about doing what was right, even when the odds were stacked against him. And in the end, That's what saved Anderson Farm. This story isn't just about one man's fight to save his land. It's a reminder that some things are worth more than money. It's a testament to the power of loyalty, the importance of tradition, and the enduring spirit of those who serve their country in ways big and small. So the next time you hear the word loyalty, think of Bill Anderson. Think of the farmer who stood his ground, who refused to let progress erase history. And remember that sometimes the most valuable things in life can't be measured in dollars and cents. Love this story? Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more, and don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.